would have seen them by now. The weather must have got 'em. Wait, system's picking up. Yes, they made it. Oh, thank Grud, Adams is here. They've docked. Adams, boy, are you a sight for sore eyes. Whole system's malfunctioning. It's accelerating the weather, not controlling it. Get in here and... Sweet Grud! No! The only thing that Face Change's crew knew about him is that he could change his face at will. Maybe he was a mutant. Maybe it was a lucky tech glitch. No one knew the truth. And if anyone did know, he'd make sure they were long dead. 2000 AD markets itself as the galaxy's greatest comic. And while I have not read every comic from planets like Mars or even other star systems within the Milky Way, I can say that it has launched, buoyed, and been the home of some of the greatest comic book writers and artists to come out of the United Kingdom. Little-known figures like Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons, Grant Morrison, modern figures like Al Ewing, Simon Bisley, Garth Ennis, the Becky Cloonan, the people that have contributed to 2000 AD are plethora and many, and I could spend a lot of the video just reciting names, remembering guys like all of our favorite sports fans do, but that isn't what I'm here for today. Instead, I wanted to have the experience of, what if I just picked a random issue, or prog, as they call it in the 2000 AD lingo, off of the stands, without any context, in the middle of story arcs, and read it. Because yes, 2000 AD is a serialized magazine. They usually have, 4 or 5 stories from different creators, and they're all running concurrently. So you might be reading part 1 of a story, and then it's followed up by part 9 of a story, and then a part 3, and then a part 5. There's no real telling what you're going to get month to month, and indeed week to week, as that is how often 2000 AD comes out. So what is it like reading a random prog of 2000 AD? Let's find out. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Steven, but you may know me by my superhero alter ego, Spike Stonehand. And welcome to my channel, Divining Comics, where I explore the magic hidden between the panels of your favorite comics.
Boys and girls, your attention, please. Presenting a new exciting radio program featuring the thrilling adventures of an amazing and incredible personality.
If this is your first time here, let me welcome you to Divining Comics. Now, what I do here is a 52 comics challenge, akin to the Criterion Challenge, if you've ever heard of that, where I pick 52 comics, one every week, based off of a series of categories, all designed to increase my knowledge of the breadth and depth of comics as a global and historical art form. Because while I do love comics of all sorts, from superhero fare to independent stuff to manga to French bande dessinée, I feel like there's always more for me to learn, always room for me to expand my knowledge of the medium. And so I would like to do that myself and also share that journey with all of you. And hopefully some of you want to come along with me on the journey. If you would like to do so, please give this video a like and subscribe to this channel. That really helps boost the metrics. That helps put my video in front of more people, and it's a free and easy way to say, hey, I like this project that you're doing and I'd like to see more of it. If you'd like to go even further, you can support me financially for a few dollars a month on Patreon. You'll get your name at the end of the video. You can follow my blog, spikestonehand.com, where I have weekly comics new buyer's guides and link roundups to all the industry news, reviews, and interviews that I liked, podcasts, YouTubes, whatever. I link all of my favorite stuff in my newsletter. And hey, comment along if you have read any issues of 2000 AD. Tell me what I need to check out. Tell me what the best runs are. But All that aside, now let's dig into this prog of 2000 AD. So for this video, I read the most recent prog that came out last Wednesday. It's a prog 2471. You can get it online at the 2000 AD shop for $3, or you can subscribe to the whole month's worth of progs for about $10, which is a pretty great deal, especially given the serialized nature of this. Something that I'm going to probably touch on a little bit more is that you're not really getting a full story for almost any of these, right? And if that's what you want out of your comics reading experience, you might be a little frustrated with this, but if you can dig into kind of the serialized storytelling a little bit, there might be something more for you here. Side note, I also just remember hearing that at the Comics Pro meeting a couple weeks ago, which is a retailer convention, all the publishers go and tell all the retailers what they've got coming up this next year. I think it was announced that 2000 AD print subscriptions are coming to the United States at some point in the near future. So if that's something you're interested in, hey, go talk to your local comic book shop and see if you can get some print versions of 2000 AD. You get a print subscription every week. It'll fill up your long box very quickly. But so this one, 2471, it had 5 stories. It had a Judge Dredd story, a part 1, so that's pretty cool. It had an ongoing Judge D story. I think that she's kind of the, what's the word, like psionic member of the judges in the Judge Dredd universe. It had a story that I had no real context for. It seemed kind of like a epic fantasy, maybe, with angels and demons and King Arthur. That one was called Hearn and Shuck. It had a one-off complete short story. There was a horror one called Terror Tale, and then it wrapped things up with a middle of a sci-fi universe. I'm not sure if it's actually connected to 2000 AD shared universe or if it's just its own standalone story universe, but it involved a prison planet, it seemed, like a junkyard of people, and a girl trying to get revenge on the father that never cared for her. So let's dig into each of those stories a little bit. So looking at my notes here, the first story, the Judge Dredd story, it is written by Rob Williams and Ned Hartley, with art by P.J. Holden, colors by Jack Davies, and letters by Annie Parkhouse. Like I said, it is part 1 of a story called Climate Crisis, and in this Judge Dredd universe, it's revealed that all of the weather is controlled by the authoritarians who control the world, that the judges are the enforcers for, right? They control the weather, and you find out that things are on haywire. There's weather happening that shouldn't be happening. They go up to the space station to investigate what's going on, but it turns out the people they sent to investigate are actually in on some big conspiracy. There's a guy who seems like a very cool pulp villain named Face Change. You guessed it, he can change his face. And that's just good pulp writing, folks. I mean, what more could you ask for? But he has a man on the inside of this weather-controlling satellite, and they're using those powers to generate a ransom, to threaten the rich people in the society, to threaten, I think it's District 1, right? So the elites all live in number 1, and they're threatening them with increasingly erratic weather, potentially leading up to their destruction if their big ransom isn't paid. And of course, the serialized chapter ends with the threat of our man Judge Dredd being sent up to get to them. And this is kind of what I was saying when I talked about that the serialized nature of these stories might be a little frustrating to some of you if you're not used to reading stories this way, or if you're not willing to commit to reading a series of chapters for a month or 2 or longer. I don't know how long these stories usually run, but you're really getting just setup here. You're getting world building. You're getting some fun stuff about here's the problem, the weather, here's the villain, Face Change, and here's the promise of action, Judge Dredd. And you're not actually getting necessarily any of the payoffs at this point yet, so you have to be willing to delay your gratification in that sense. But all that said, this was a really tight and economical use of storytelling, right? It's not that many pages, and yet, as I detailed to you, there's a lot of story involved, and I'm leaving out a lot of really fun and memorable moments, like when they're talking to the, I believe, mayor of the rich district, District 1, and he's a very comical character, kind of a parody of the landed gentry that you find more in England than in the United States, where he's insisting on using his proper title. He refuses to be called by any informal name, even if that is what he is legally called. So you get lots of little fun bits of flavor in addition to this fun setup. I think that this is a really promising beginning to a story that I would see myself continuing to read. Moving on to the second story. This one is labeled Hearn and Shuck Power Trip Part 9, and this story is written by David Barnett, drawn by Lee Milmore, colors by Gary Caldwell, and lettered by Annie Parkhouse. And this was definitely the hardest story in the bunch for me to make heads or tails of at all. I had really no idea what was going on in the slightest. You see, it begins with some guy who I'm not really sure who he is, if he's Hearn or maybe he's Shuck, and he gets kind of teleported to this fantasy realm. There's a tomb, and he knocks on the tomb, and inside it is King Arthur, and King Arthur tricks this main character into taking spots with him. He's holding up the roof of the tomb. It'll collapse if he stops, and King Arthur tricks the guy into going in and taking his spot, and now he's stuck in the tomb. And then that storyline ends, and you jump to this big business tower. There's some politician who's working with this kind of punk girl. The politician says he's reformed. He used to be possessed by a demon, but no longer is. Now he's converted to being a good Christian boy, and he wants to fight some organization that is doing evil. The girl's kind of not sure what his motives are, but we get a flash in his reflection in the window. It seems like he is still possessed by whatever demon had possessed him before. Maybe things are not all that they seem. And that's it. That's all the context I get. I don't know who Shern or Huck are. You see, I even mixed up the names there. It's Hearn and Shuck. I don't know if those were the two characters that we meant, the boy and the girl. I think the girl was called something else, so maybe that, it's a nickname. I didn't really know what a lot of them wanted, what was going on. So this was definitely, I think, one of the weaker stories in the batch for me. And the art wasn't so stunning either. I think that these tight limitations that you have in releasing weekly comics like they do, they really do force artists to do the essentials. They're not going to be doing anything stunning. They're not going to be doing anything formally experimental, because that takes time, right? That takes a lot of thought and effort and care, and they don't have that luxury. They have to churn out pages, bang, bang, boom, get it done, right? And so I think that there wasn't anything necessarily to hook me here, either on the story or art level. And again, the art wasn't bad. It's just very meat and potatoes. Like I said, it got the job done, told the story clearly and economically, but I had no idea what was going on. The third story in the bunch was the Judge D story. This one was scripted by Ben Wheatley, with art by Simon Colby, colors by Jack Davies, and lettered by Simon Boland. And like I said, Judge D seems to be the psionic member, maybe kind of more equivalent to the secret police, CIA element of the judges versus our Dredd, who has to wear the mask, and he's definitely more of a frontline soldier who I guess maybe has worked his way up. Judge D doesn't have to wear the mask, and they're maybe doing things that are a little more ethically nuanced versus the judges' at least perceived black and white morality in their heads. And I thought this was actually, even though I was just as confused in a lot of ways as to the specifics of what was going on, I thought this really engaged me and intrigued me for something that is part 5 of an ongoing story. For one, the artwork was very moody, had a lot of deep, dark inks, very shadowy, and I think that kind of plays into my perception of this being a more nuanced story than your typical Judge Dredd story. But I think further, just the way that the story was told gave me a lot of information in a very short time period, caught me up with what was going on, right? You have the D and this demon alien entity that's kind of possessing her, and they're caught up in this political intrigue of double crossings and triple crossings. And there's a Soviet, they call him Sovs, named Blavatsky, who is trying to use Dee and the being possessing her, use their psionic energy in order to reanimate this formerly dead officer, and imbue his energy into the public, which will drive everyone crazy and cause all sorts of chaos as an act of revenge. And it's just like I said, all of that is done very, very well. I think it's funny conceptually that even in this Judge Dredd future of the, I don't know if it's literally supposed to be the distant future of the year 2000 AD, or if there's something else going on here, but I love that there's still Soviets. I love that there's the kind of just say, hey, why not? That was a great storytelling device when you had this rival nation, East versus West here. Let's just keep it up. Let's play the spy games. Let's do your classic Cold War noir, but with this sci-fi twist. And I thought it was just really well done. I liked, like I said, reading it. I liked the artwork, even though it was in the middle of part 5. I could very easily pick up that there was these complex motivations. You can't really know for sure if Dee is on the up and up, if she's being controlled, if she is lying to herself, to her superior officers, to Blavatsky, and it was just very well done. That kind of Cold War, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, game of intrigue and spycraft. I really liked this one. This was, I think, very promising. If you were to start reading in the middle of 2000 AD, like I did for this episode, that there would be stories of worth that you could just kind of jump in and figure out as you go. Ride the wave, as it were, and in the middle of the story until it ends, and you hop right on to the next arc. I think that's promising that they're able to do that with this very, very short story in the middle of an arc. So the fourth story was the standalone terror tale, as I said earlier. This one is called Fountain of Youth. It is written by Andy Ewington, art by Mike Walters, and lettered by Rob Steen. And it tells a complete story of a child who gets into a fight with his mother, saying, when things will be different when I grow up. This older lady grabs his wrist and seemingly transfers this curse to him, where now he is rapidly growing older and older and older, and is at risk of dying himself. He doesn't appreciate his childhood. He's at risk of losing it again. So the old lady, who is now a young child again herself, tells him that he has to pass this curse on. So he finds some other child who wishes to be an adult and no longer wishes to be a child, and he passes the curse along to her. This is, your classic in the vein of something like an EC horror with the fun premise that gets explored quickly, reveals to be horrific, and then kind of a dark ending. It was all right. It wasn't my favorite of the bunch here. I did really like the art style. It was told in a very black and white, with maybe just a few hints of grays interspersed throughout, and that really separated it from the rest of the comic that is in full color. It made this one story stand out visually, and I thought that was kind of cool. But the story itself didn't really catch me in any way. I didn't feel like that the central conceit was getting at some deeper truth of humanity, about the ways that maybe people continue a cycle of violence, victimizing other children, preventing them because of the way that they were victimized when they were children. I just didn't really feel like that was done with a lot of intentionality, though you could have a reading there. It just wasn't my favorite of the bunch, but hey, maybe your mileage was different, and the fact that they have a standalone story for somebody who, like me, is just jumping into a random Prague of 2000 AD, I appreciate that they're trying to give you a complete story and not just a bunch of, part 3s, part 5, part 7s, whatever. It's like, no, here's a one story that's a one and done. I think that it's good that they do that, and they should continue to do that. The problem is, sometimes one and done stories are hit and miss. You never know if they'll be successful or not. So, while I appreciate the effort, this story wasn't my favorite. And the final story in the bunch was The Discarded Part 9 with a Peter Milligan script, art from Kieran McCown, colors by Jim Boswell, and lettered again by Simon Boland. And like I said, this one is told on a kind of prison planet. This girl who is the daughter of a well-respected kind of revolutionary underground figure. She thinks he was a terrible dad and she wants revenge against him. But the story begins and she's being caught by these gang members that are threatening to kill her, and they're only stopped when she mentions who her father is, somebody that they have respect for, even though she is opposed to him. They say, well, how could his daughter be pure evil? We've got to let her go. We wouldn't want to damage or hurt the daughter of this legendary revolutionary leader. And then at the end of the issue, she encounters a hitman who's there to kill her at the orders of her father. This one, there was a lot of cool world building done with little bits and pieces here. All right, learning about this kind of revolutionary that is at the same time, well respected by more traditional gang members or violent criminals. Obviously, in a sci-fi setting where they're on like a junkyard planet. They send all of the prisoners and outcasts to. But I thought that it was well done, kind of building up some of these characters in this world. I did find at least in this chapter, the main character felt a little passive. She was just kind of reacting while these people were threatening to kill her, and then all that she ends up doing is just saying who her father is. And while I think that kind of creates some fun world building, it doesn't read great as a story. It's kind of to use a modern parlance, a bit nepo baby, right? Do you know who my father is? My father wouldn't respect you. I don't know. It just felt a little off. And maybe if I had read parts 1 through 8 of this story, that would make more sense. It would be in character with her, but just reading this little glimpse, I wasn't the hugest fan of it. It didn't seem like something that I would really super love reading, but it wasn't bad. I had an okay time reading it. So thinking about this prog as a whole, what are some takeaways that I have? Well, I think that one, the very short stories really forces people to be economic with their storytelling. They have to build a world, build out convincing characters, have them do decisive actions in a very quick, short time. And I think that frenetic pace really keeps things interesting week to week. You have to begin on a big moment of action, and you have to end on a cliffhanger, and you have to keep it interesting on the 2 or 3 pages between. I'm sure that frenetic pace would read interestingly when collected into a longer volume, right? If you just have all parts, 10, however many parts of an individual story in one volume, that would really be a fun and frenetic pace, breakneck, as they say. And I could see that being interesting. And like I said, the art, it's probably a trial by fire for a lot of the creators. They don't have the time to really experiment, to do anything out there or weird or messy. They have to tell a story that is clear and coherent because they only have 5 pages to do it. So they got to make sure they get in and get out quickly and do so with as much clarity and focus as any moment. And so I can really see why this crucible has created such good writers and artists that are then able to cross over into American comics, that are able to cross over into other European comics and tell interesting stories that have become so impactful and so important, so big in sales and big in import. But because it is really like only the best of the best are able to thrive under this 2080 system, and if you're not there, either you burn out or you become better. And I think that's a really interesting model that we don't really have a good testing ground like that in American comics, just because of the ways that there isn't that serialized, quick 5-page story coming out every week. Most American comics are monthly. We have a bit longer to tell a story. You don't get that instantaneous feedback that you would every week. It's a very different model of storytelling, much more akin to something like Shonen Jump in Japan, which, hey, I'll be talking about that in a few weeks. And I think that really brings out some interesting story elements, even as some of the stories here weren't the ideal reading experience jumping in the middle here, and it wasn't something that I really particularly loved all the time. Would I continue reading this? I think not unless I really want to commit to reading it, if that makes sense. You would have to really want to stick with for several months to get the full story. I think to get the full value out of 2000 AD. That being said, I think really love reading this in collected formats, just reading through a full story from beginning to end. And I don't know how, I haven't looked into the best ways to do that. There's an interesting project called Let's All Meet Up in the Year 2000 AD that is done by, I think, Tom Shapiro is the blogger's name, and he reviews, he's only done a couple years so far, but he's reviewing 2000 AD year by year while looking at these completed stories instead of reading them serialized week to week. And I think that's a much more sensible way to do this, especially if you're going back and reading some of the older stuff, is to look at the complete stories and jump around with the writers and artists that interest you instead of trying to read it week by week, getting these just little chunks and bits and pieces of incomplete stories. Who would I recommend this for? Obviously, if you love comics and indeed most media from that kind of satirical UK dry humor, things that are a bit over the top, and then also you're not afraid to get a little bit silly with it, right? Douglas Adams. I think that you would find a lot of value here. If you just love sci-fi in general, almost all of these stories would fall under that category, and you get some really great stuff there. If you like punk stuff, that definitely infuses a lot of the science fiction as well. And of course, if you want to know more about Judge Dredd, you should check out 2000 AD. Thanks again for watching this video. Like I said, throw me a like, throw me a comment, tell me what I'm missing and why 2000 AD is actually even better than I think it is. Tell me the ideal way to read these stories. Again, just tell me why I'm wrong. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Never let the magic of comics die.
Old Enoch, he lived to be 365 when the Lord came and took him back to heaven alive. I saw the light from heaven shining all around. I saw the light come shining. I saw that light come down.